This is my body, and it's fine. It's where I spend the vast majority of my time. It's not perfect, but it's mine. It's not perfect.
Now, I'm a bit of an unusual presenter. Whilst most presenters tell you, and I bet someone did this earlier tonight before I got here, to turn off your mobile phones or turn them onto silent. Did they do that? Yeah, okay. Well, I want you to turn them off silent, and I want you to get them out. Because I want you to get on Facebook, Twitter, or your social network of choice and tell your friends where you are, why you're here, and who you're listening to. Share your support for these awards. Encourage your friends to join you in that support. And if you like what I have to say, tweet or Facebook it. I'm on Twitter at Graeme Innes, GraemeInnes, or Facebook at Graeme Innes AM. But if you don't like what I'm saying, put your phone away right now. I've got a beautiful daughter who's now 18. But she grew up during the time I was Commissioner at the Australian Human Rights Commission. And my job as Commissioner required me to travel interstate or occasionally internationally. I flew at that stage and still do, although I think the average has actually gone up now, on average once a week. Now, why have I given you these two seemingly unrelated pieces of information? Well, the love of dads for their daughters is well recognised as special. And it meant that every time I travelled, Rachel expected me to return with a present. And her expectations were usually realised. Often, it was a soft toy. I think her collection of soft toys at one point reached 86. Now, buying these soft toys, or TEDs as we call them in our family, has for me a mostly negative impact. Although Rachel enjoyed them very much. I mean, certainly I experienced the joy of giving, but they cost me money, they filled up our house, and she usually threw the nearest one at me when I woke her in the morning. So, for a while, I've pondered what other positive benefits I could gain from these soft toys. One benefit that I came up with was to provide me for the acronym of principles for awards presentations speeches, of which I make a few. And the acronym is TEDs. Firstly, such speeches should be topical. You have to consider your audience and you have to make the speech relevant. Secondly, they have to be entertaining, using humour, questions and challenges to keep the audience engaged. Thirdly, they have to be descriptive, making key points with the telling of stories. And finally, they must be short. So when I come to the end of this speech and you rate it with your applause, please consider whether it has met the TEDS test. So why are we here tonight? There are many answers to that question. Some might say to see friends. Others, because my partner told me to be here. But really, we're here to provide support for an event which recognises Australians with disabilities. 20% of our population, or 1 in 5. And it's very appropriate to do that, of course, on the International Day of People with Disabilities. Although I actually think we should be doing it all year round. Now, that's of course why you have an Access Committee, to ensure that Council keeps disability issues top of mind. Issues which impact on 20% of the population, or 1 in 5 Tweed residents. And can I just say that your committee has a hugely valuable resource. And I want to make sure that you're all aware of that resource, and it's that in the person of a very old and good, not old, she's probably younger than me, good friend of mine, Faye Druitt. Faye worked as the Executive Officer of the most effective advocacy organisation for people with disabilities in Australia. And she also worked to establish the Disability Discrimination Act under the first Commissioner, Elizabeth Hastings, when it was first passed. And so if I can use a Star Wars analogy, which is current at the moment, the Force is strong in that one. So make sure you use her knowledge and wisdom, because she has a lot of it. Yeah, that's right. She said that I'd give her a bit of street cred if I told her that I could. I actually think she gives me street cred more than I give her. People with disabilities are significantly disadvantaged. 45% of us live in or near poverty. We're employed at a rate 30% lower than the average of the general population, and we're disproportionately highly represented in Australia's prisons. In fact, so much so that prisons have become an alternative accommodation option for people with disabilities. So it's a damn good cause to support, really. Many organisations ensure that many of us in the community with disabilities have more control of our lives. And I think that's worth your support for tonight's celebration. But you know, it's not just about tonight. It's about all year, as I said. And if you're serious about inclusion, you need to be continually asking yourself the hard questions. What percentage of council employees are people with disabilities? Do you have hearing loops in your venues, and are they accessible? Does your library include audio books? Do you have electronic voting in your council elections? Is inclusion of people with disabilities one of the KPIs on which you base your decisions about funding for community and sporting organisations? Do all building applications you approve require access according to the accessible premises standards? And is your social housing accessible? And when you can answer yes to all of those and many other questions, that's when you'll be achieving real inclusion of people with disabilities. Now, there are many reasons why people with disabilities should take control of our own lives. But basically they come down to the reality that societies work best if all members are included, and that societies are less functional if people are excluded or left on the margins. These precepts have been recognised by most societies throughout history. So it's not beneficial for one group of society to live below the poverty line, or for half of that group. It's not beneficial for one group in society to be employed at a participation rate 30% less than the general population. Or that it's not beneficial when the Year 12 completion rate in the general population is 50%, for people with disabilities to only have a completion rate of 25%. But despite knowing that marginalisation is not good for society, that's what we do to people with disabilities. However, Australia, I think, is changing. A few years ago, we ratified a UN convention, the Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities, or as I like to refer to it, the Disability Convention, or using my Australian approach and an even shorter name, the DISCO. Not just because of the Australian habit of shortening names, but because for me it creates this wonderful and positive image of people with a disability going everywhere in the community, including dancing at the disco. Although, as the colour of my hair would indicate, it's been a few years since my disco dancing days. I now do dad dancing, which is a great embarrassment to my teenage daughter. We've also passed disability discrimination legislation, which I referred to earlier, and which I was very pleased to administer for almost 9 years. And several years ago, we as a community agreed to implement the National Disability Insurance Scheme. And surveys indicate that 78% of us supported a 0.5% increase in the Medicare levy to part fund the scheme, the most popular tax increase in our nation's history. These laws and conventions and many others seek to address that societal imbalance, but they're not worth much without people with disabilities to utilise them. And I want to tell you some stories tonight, one about shopping and the other about catching a train. And then, because I know they're always popular, a guide dog story. These stories illustrate the importance of using the legislation that I've talked about. Giselle Mesnage wanted to do her supermarket shopping. And she preferred, like many of us, to do it online. But because the Coles website didn't work properly with her screen reader, the device that she, as a person with a disability, uses to access the internet, the supermarket shopping, which would take you 20 minutes, could take her up to 6 hours. Giselle lodged a discrimination complaint under the Disability Discrimination Act and recently settled her case against Coles. And her actions have made that website far more accessible. This resulted in a better online shopping experience for Giselle and for many other people with disabilities who struggled to use the site. You've reduced marginalisation, so well done, Giselle. Second story. I just wanted to catch a train. But this was hard because Sydney trains didn't announce each station. If you could see, the signs told you where you were. But for me, that was about as helpful as someone telling me that the door I want is just over there. And don't worry, it happens to me all the time. I just wanted Sydney trains to tell me where I was. So I took them to the federal court, where they spent $600,000, which could have been spent on better PA systems or training guards to make announcements, in fighting against me in that court. Pleasingly, I won that case, and announcements are now made much more frequently, providing a better travel experience for me and for all commuters. Now my guide dog story. I completed a meeting with some senior bank officials in Brisbane. Yep, this is a Queensland story, but I'm just south of the border, so I should get away with it. Walking with my guide dog, I got into the elevators on the 30th floor of their building at the same time as another person. And the lift buttons weren't marked with raised letters or braille, so I didn't know which one to press. Turning to the other man in the lift, I said, "Could you press the button for ground, please?" I got no response. Thinking that he may have a hearing impairment, no, I was the Disability Discrimination Commissioner at the time, you've got to think about these things. I looked directly at him so that he could read my lips, and I said a little bit more clearly, "Could you press ground, please?" Still no response. So puzzled, I reached over and tapped him on the shoulder and repeated my request. "Oh," he said, "are you talking to me? I thought you were asking the guide dog." Now, my guide dog's good, but she hasn't learned to read lift buttons just yet. Alright, so you like dog stories, I thought you would. Well, my guide dog blogs. She gets on my website when I'm not looking, and if you like stories about her or stories told by me, you can use the bookmarks which I think Karen has distributed. I was going to put them all on the tables before you all got here, but what can I say, Jetstar, to register to receive her blog, or to pre-register to receive my memoirs, Finding a Way, which will come out next July. So look out for those bookmarks. They're just like this, and follow up on either my book or the guide dog blog. Sadly, I think her blog is far more popular than mine, so I might have to do something about that. But why have I told you these stories really, though? Because we're here today to support a broader sort of thinking, ensuring that society caters for everyone, not just for people without disability. But this broader thinking is a responsibility we all share. You know, the then leader of Australia's military, David Morrison, recently said, in the context of inappropriate behaviour towards women in the Defence Force, that the standards we walk past are the standards we accept. And this raised the bar on that topic, making inappropriate behaviour a responsibility of the whole ADF. And inappropriate treatment of people with disability should also be the responsibility of all of us. We all need to think about the way we can change our society to include everyone. Not just making our buildings and our buses accessible, not just building more accessible websites, not just making announcements on public transport, it's about changing our approach. So what should we do? Well, not disempower people by making it harder for them to shop or catch a train. Not accept that there's nothing we can do if a person can't vote because they don't read or write in print. Not expect that everyone will behave in the same way. Just because you can hear a question asked in a noisy restaurant, don't get cranky with the customer who asks you to look at them when you're speaking to them. They may have a hearing impairment. Give some thought to why your employee is asking to work less hours for a month or two. With a few careful questions, you may discover that it's a result of their mental illness. We won't have a fair and well-functioning community until we include all of its different members. And that's what these awards should be used to achieve. And we won't include everyone until we challenge the negative assumptions that are made about people. Now, one of the ways that we might do that, or at least start to do that, is by turning some assumptions upside down. Now, I want to do that. For instance, I want all of you who did not bring your own chair with you tonight to please stand up. Come on, up you get. All of you who didn't bring your own chair. And now that you're standing up, let me tell you that you all cost Tweed City Council extra because we had to bring you in a chair. Okay, now sit back down on that lovely comfortable chair. Get nice and relaxed, that's it. Excellent. Now, let's go a little further. Can we dim the lights? In fact, can we turn the lights off? Are you ready to listen to me in the dark? Well, come on, I am. What's your problem? And finally, did everyone get that sentence? You all did? Oh, you mean you can't lip read? Okay, more cost for the public address system then. You see, the problem with our society is that all of you able-bodied people are costing us so much extra. Because of all those chairs and lights and loudspeakers that you seem to need. If we could cut out those costs, the council budget would be zinging along. On the other hand, though, perhaps we should show a little humanity and respect for your difference. I mean, I think I'll start a campaign for a national able-bodied insurance scheme. But seriously, whatever those negative assumptions are made, we'll need awards like these and committees such as your Access Committee to challenge them. So join me to support people with disabilities so we can keep challenging assumptions. And if you like the way I challenge assumptions, use those bookmarks. Thanks for the chance to talk.
This is my brain.